Damon Murdoch, principal lawyer at Leo Lawyers. Although this looks and sounds like me, what you're watching is my AI avatar presenting from a script that I've written and approved. If you're running a startup, one of the biggest challenges you'll face is this. How do you attract and retain top talent without giving away too much of your company? That's where an employee share option plan, or ESOP, comes in. But if it's not structured properly, it can create serious problems, including unintended dilution, tax issues, and disputes with both employees and shareholders. So today, I'll walk you through how to structure an ESOP that motivates your team, aligns incentives, and protects existing shareholder equity. Let's start with the basics. An ESOP gives employees the option to acquire shares in the company at a later date rather than giving them shares immediately. For example, if you grant an employee one option, that option may convert into one share in the future, depending on the terms of the ESOP. This structure allows employees to benefit from the company's growth without immediately diluting existing shareholders. The first step in structuring an ESOP is setting a defined option pool. This is usually expressed as a percentage of total share capital. It ensures that dilution is controlled and predictable rather than happening unexpectedly over time. A common approach is to reserve part of that pool, often around 10%, for future hires or key strategic appointments. You also need to ensure that options are issued at a market-based valuation, typically determined using the asset test or safe harbor test. This is not something you should calculate yourself. It must be done with an accountant because incorrect valuation can prevent employees from accessing tax concessions. Next, we look at vesting. A typical ESOP uses a multi-year vesting structure, often over 3 or 4 years, combining time and performance conditions. For example, 50% of the options might vest based on achieving key performance indicators, while the remaining 50% vests over time through continued employment. You may have also heard of a cliff. This means the employee must remain employed for a minimum period before any options vest. For instance, a 1-year cliff followed by monthly vesting at 148 means the employee earns their equity gradually over 4 years, but only after the first year. This structure is critical. It ensures employees stay with the business and contribute to long-term growth. In some ESOPs, employees are offered a loan to fund the purchase of shares when their options are exercised. This removes the upfront financial burden and makes participation more accessible. However, these loans must be carefully structured. You need to clearly define repayment terms and what happens if the employee leaves, whether the loan is repayable immediately or offset against the shares. Now let's talk about protecting existing shareholders. One of the biggest risks in an ESOP is losing control over who holds equity in your company. That's why ESOPs and shareholder agreements usually include strict transfer restrictions. Employees are typically prevented from transferring shares to third parties. There are also usually buyback rights if employment ends. These protections ensure that equity stays within the intended ownership structure. Another critical concept is the distinction between good leavers and bad leavers. A good leaver typically resigns after a minimum period or leaves due to health issues. A bad leaver is someone terminated for serious misconduct, such as breaching confidentiality, intellectual property obligations, or restraint clauses. The consequences are very different. A good leaver usually keeps vested options. A bad leaver often loses both or may have vested options bought back at a discount. This distinction is essential to protect the company and incentivize proper conduct. Every aspect must be clearly defined in your documentation. An ESOP is only as strong as its documentation. Every aspect must be defined: vesting schedules, valuation methods, loan terms, and leaver provisions. But just as important is communication. Employees need to understand what they're receiving, when it vests, and what conditions apply. If they don't, misunderstandings and disputes are almost inevitable. Your ESOP also needs to be flexible as your company grows. As your company grows or approaches an exit, such as an acquisition or IPO, your ESOP must adapt. Build in mechanisms to adjust the pool and update valuations. Finally, you need to balance motivation with financial impact. When options convert into shares, they dilute existing shareholders. A well-structured ESOP strikes the right balance between rewarding employees and protecting the long-term interests of the company. An ESOP can be one of the most powerful tools for building a high-performing team, but only if it's structured properly. Every element needs careful design. At Leo Lawyers, we help startups and growth companies design ESOPs that align incentives, minimize risk, and protect shareholder value. If you're looking to implement or review an ESOP, you'll find our contact details in the description box, or you can visit us at leolawyers.com.au. Thanks for watching.